The Crusades, 1095 to 1291 and beyond. Background and causes. The Crusades were a series of religiously motivated military campaigns initiated by the Catholic Church between the 11th and 13th centuries. They aimed primarily at recapturing Jerusalem and other holy sites in the Levant from Muslim control. Key causes included religious factors. Pope Urban II's call at the Council of Clermont in 1095 appealed to Christian piety and promised spiritual rewards for those who joined. Political motivations. European nobles sought to increase their power and prestige by participating. Socio-economic conditions. Land shortages and population growth encouraged younger sons of nobles, who had limited inheritance opportunities, to seek fortunes abroad. Conflict and cooperation with Byzantium. The Byzantine Empire sought Western aid to resist Turkish advances, which provided a catalyst for the First Crusade. Major Crusades and outcomes. First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, successfully captured Jerusalem and established Crusader states such as the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Second Crusade, 1147 to 1149, a failed attempt to regain lost territories. Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192, led by Richard the Lionheart and others, resulted in a truce allowing Christian pilgrims access to Jerusalem. Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204, deviated from its goal, leading to the sack of Constantinople and weakening Byzantine power. Subsequent crusades had varying degrees of success and were less effective, ultimately ending with the fall of Acre in 1291. Impact of the Crusades. Cultural exchange. Increased contact between Europe and the Islamic world led to the transfer of knowledge, including science, medicine, and philosophy. Economic expansion. Trade networks expanded as Europeans gained access to Eastern goods like spices, textiles, and silks. Military developments. Techniques and technologies, such as fortifications and weaponry, improved through exposure to Eastern practices. Weakened Byzantine Empire. The Fourth Crusade irreparably damaged Byzantine strength, contributing to its eventual fall in 1453. Religious tensions deepened the schism between Christianity and Islam, as well as between the Catholic and Orthodox churches. The expansion of European kingdoms. Context and motivations. During and after the Crusades, European kingdoms experienced territorial and political expansion. This period saw the rise of centralized monarchies, the reconquest of Muslim territories, and colonial ventures. Reconquista, 8th to 15th centuries, the gradual Christian reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule. Northern expansion. Scandinavian kingdoms extended influence through trade, exploration, and conquest. Colonization efforts. Crusading spirit inspired later colonization, such as the Norman conquest of Sicily and the Baltic Crusades. Key features of expansion. Territorial consolidation. Monarchs like Philip II of France and Henry II of England strengthened their domains through warfare and alliances. Institutional growth. Feudal systems evolved, with stronger central governments emerging in kingdoms like England and France. Economic growth. Urban centers and trade flourished due to increased stability and wealth from expanded territories. Exploration. The crusading ethos encouraged exploration, eventually leading to the Age of Discovery in the 15th century. Consequences. Increased royal power. The weakening of feudal lords during the Crusades allowed monarchs to consolidate authority. Population movements. Crusades opened new lands for settlement, and reconquest efforts displaced Muslim and Jewish populations. Cultural integration. Crusader states and expanded territories fostered interaction between diverse cultural and religious groups. Interconnections between the Crusades and expansion. The Crusades directly influenced the expansion of European kingdoms in several ways. Military and administrative practices. Crusading campaigns provided models for organizing large-scale conquests and governing diverse territories. Ideological impacts. The idea of spreading Christianity became a justification for territorial expansion. Economic foundations. The wealth accumulated from Crusader trade and campaigns helped fund future expansion efforts. Conclusion. The Crusades and the expansion of European kingdoms were pivotal in shaping medieval Europe. The Crusades not only fueled religious fervor, but also fostered economic and cultural exchanges that transformed European societies. Meanwhile, territorial expansion strengthened monarchies and laid the groundwork for the emergence of modern nation-states. Long-term effects of the Crusades and expansion. The Crusades and the territorial expansion of European kingdoms had profound and lasting effects that shaped Europe's political, cultural, and economic trajectory. Below are some of the most significant long-term consequences. 1. Political and territorial changes. Centralization of power. Monarchs gained power as many nobles perished or depleted their resources in the Crusades. This shift facilitated the rise of centralized states, especially in France and England. The weakening of smaller feudal lords and the redistribution of their lands allowed kings to consolidate authority. Geopolitical boundaries. The Crusades influenced territorial control, such as the establishment of the Crusader states in the Levant and the temporary expansion of Christian territories in Spain during the Reconquista. The decline of the Byzantine Empire after the Fourth Crusade created a power vacuum, eventually filled by the Ottoman Empire, which posed a major challenge to European kingdoms for centuries. Diplomacy and alliances. The necessity of coordination during the Crusades encouraged alliances between European states, influencing later diplomatic practices. Encounters with the Mongols and other non-Christian powers during the Crusades shaped early attempts at global diplomacy. 2. Religious and cultural impacts. Rise of religious orders. Military orders such as the Knights Templar, Hospitallers, and Teutonic Knights played key roles during the Crusades and later became influential in European politics, finance, and warfare. Christianization efforts. The crusading spirit was redirected towards internal and external non-Christian populations, including the Baltic Crusades, aimed at converting pagan groups in Northern Europe. Religious intolerance deepened, manifesting in expulsions and persecution of Jews and Muslims in Europe, such as during the Spanish Reconquista and the Inquisition. Cultural exchange and integration. Despite the conflict, the Crusades facilitated the transfer of knowledge, architecture, and culture between East and West. Exposure to Islamic advancements in medicine, astronomy, and philosophy influenced European intellectual growth, eventually feeding into the Renaissance. 3. Economic growth and transformation. Trade networks. The Crusades opened and intensified trade routes linking Europe with the Middle East and Asia. Cities like Venice and Genoa flourished as hubs for Eastern goods such as spices, textiles, and precious metals. The demand for luxury goods imported from the East spurred economic activity and contributed to the development of a merchant class in Europe. Financial innovations. The need to fund large-scale crusading campaigns led to the development of banking systems and credit mechanisms. Institutions like the Knights Templar operated as early international banking networks. Monarchs increasingly taxed their subjects, laying the groundwork for modern state finance. Urbanization. The economic boom fueled by expanded trade led to the growth of cities and towns, which became centers of commerce and culture. 4. Intellectual and technological advancements. Transmission of knowledge. The Crusades exposed Europeans to Islamic scholarship, preserving and expanding upon ancient Greek and Roman texts that had been lost in the West. Advancements in navigation, mathematics, and engineering were integrated into European practices. Military innovations. Europeans adopted technologies such as the crossbow, improved siege engines, and fortification designs like concentric castles from their encounters in the Middle East. Educational growth. Universities in Europe began to incorporate knowledge from the Islamic world, laying the intellectual foundations for the scholastic movement and, eventually, the Renaissance. 5. Shifts in European identity. Unified Christian identity. The Crusades fostered a stronger sense of pan-European identity under the banner of Christendom, despite internal divisions like the Great Schism, 1054. The Crusades' failure and the fall of the Crusader states in 1291 led to introspection about Europe's role in the world and contributed to the decline of papal authority. Emergence of nationalism. As monarchs gained power, distinct national identities began to emerge. For example, the Reconquista in Spain reinforced a sense of Spanish identity tied to Catholicism. Exploration and expansion. The crusading spirit lived on in European expansion beyond the Mediterranean. The Age of Discovery in the 15th and 16th centuries can be seen as an extension of the same desire for conquest and religious propagation. Conclusion: the Crusades and the expansion of European kingdoms were defining elements of the medieval period, leaving a legacy that shaped Europe's future. Politically, they enabled the rise of strong centralized states. Economically, they opened Europe to global trade and innovations. Culturally, the exchange of ideas contributed to the Renaissance, while religiously, the conflicts defined relationships between Christianity, Islam, and Judaism for centuries. These developments set the stage for Europe's global influence during the early modern era.